that for you. And so then that, once we get on the spiritual journey, we can create this mental image in our head of what an enlightened being or an awake person or a spiritually complete person or whatever the word is would look like. And then we are making a subconscious or conscious decision to just pretend that that's not bothering me. And I can, this becomes the new facade that we hold up to the public. So that's my understanding of this today. I don't know how complete of an understanding that is. So, but it seems like a good place to start. I mean, to you guys, is that complete, or am I only looking at a portion of it?
I'm sure we're going to explore all kinds of nuances in the next hour or so, but I think there's nothing you said that I would disagree with. No.
Yeah. Me neither. I don't know that there's any whole complete definition of it. Yeah, I mean, just using different words, really, Bobby. The examples I would come up with are avoiding reality and what's happening in the world, because it makes you feel uncomfortable, and you're spiritual. Where's Bobby gone? He's trying to stare off it.
Bypassed by a bear. Sorry,
he's having a bypassing moment. Here he's bypassing back.
Go ahead, Jen.
Or deflecting conversations that make us feel uncomfortable because they don't align with our spiritual ideas or our spiritual practices, and we think we have the path and the spiritual answer, and there can be a superiority about it even. There can also be an inferiority.
Kind of contemporary Buddhist teacher Chogyam Trungpa, who's now dead for a while, but he was popular in the 70s. He called it spiritual materialism. My enlightenment is better than your enlightenment.
Yeah. Yeah. An attachment to that. Constantly looking for signs rather than actually taking ownership and taking action. I mean, it can present in just so many different ways. Or I'm above all of that. I transcend it all. It doesn't touch me. When, it might be useful to become present and be with whatever is going on, and be in a conversation, be with the uncomfortable feelings, get to know them. Would be the opposite to bypassing, I guess.
Yeah.
As I understand it. So it's pretty much the same thing as you're saying, Bobby, but it's just a different words.
Well, it's like you gotta love, or at least respect, the ego in its cleverness. It's like, I think I posted this on LinkedIn or someplace, but it says, the ego says, like, let's go on a spiritual journey. I'll drive.
Yeah.
It's like, it's going to take us right along like the edge of spirituality with ever actually compromising its own sense of identity or self. And I mean, that's a pretty clever game, because it's like I think you said it earlier, Miriam, right? This idea like that the ego thinks, yeah, we need to get rid of the ego. That's like the wild goose chase of of all time. So and I think it's just useful to remember that like, because if I could see that in myself, any place where I've like used my profound spiritual attainment to somehow put myself above someone, or to think that these matters are no longer concerning to me because that's not how a spiritual person would be. It's like that I could get, like, it's funny, I could get really annoyed watching someone else do that. And that's just my version of spiritual bypassing. You know what I mean? Like, um, um, I'm thinking, oh, look at that person. Look how they're bypassing. I would never. It's like caught in my own web. It's just so beautiful. And what that can, like if we just keep seeing it and like it creates humility. Bobby has transcended once again.
I'm
he
sure
didn't even
the
leave the
beanbag
bear
up back
this
in
time.
here shortly.
He didn't even leave the
Oh, here
bear.
he comes.
What an attention seeker.
Bobby, we're only going to let you play if you have the bear in the background.
There you go. Bring back the bear.
The lotus.
The bear disappeared somehow.
Yeah.
But Fred, it's no surprise really, when we remember that the ego is a self-protecting mechanism in the first place. Why would it want to face up to unresolved emotional issues and deal with crap that makes it feel uncomfortable?
It doesn't like pain.
No.
No. Well, it's funny because self-inflicted pain, it's 100%, like it'll do all kinds of dysfunctional things. But yeah, no, the kind of discomfort of like questioning its own identity, that's maybe a bridge too far.
Go there.
Well,
And
that's generally a difficult thing. Sorry, I was just thinking that's generally a difficult thing because it feels like we're going to die. Like how, depending on how attached we are, to use that word, to our ego, like we don't understand that our ego isn't us. So to the degree that we're attached, it is our identity, it is who we are. We feel like we're going to die if we start challenging our ego because we think that's our true self.
And there may be examples where, in fact, I think I know of some examples where that appears practically to be the case, where someone has such a profound awakening that there's like nothing left, Byron Katie supposedly had that story, and other people where and it could be very, very, I'm sure, disruptive and upsetting and, difficult to navigate in the world that way. But I don't think that's the case for the vast majority of people that are on an authentic spiritual path, meaning that it seems to me that you don't lose your ego. It just becomes like more transparent to the light, the freedom, the love of your true self. So it's like you're still going to be Miriam, just Miriam who expresses more love and freedom and clarity.
If I express more love and freedom and clarity, I'm going to get myself in trouble.
I think we have a topic for next week.
The process of the becoming, or the ego becoming transparent, can feel really threatening. Was kind of where I was sort of maneuvering, like from my own experience, also like how attached I was to certain parts of myself, put it that way, thinking that was me. And it can be even story, it can be situations, all kinds of things like that. And letting those go could feel really, really scary. I feel like I was going to die. And then at one point, somebody said to me, well, so die. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, brilliant. So I just did. I just kind of went, oh, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And then I did it, I don't know how many times. Like I just let myself die every time I felt like I was going to die. And then I just started laughing because there was no problem at all. It was funny. It was like, this is what I've been afraid of, and that was, then it was really easy. Like, okay, that's ego. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah. But for a while, depending on what I was touching in on, because in a way, it's kind of like a part of my self, which isn't myself, it's the self I think I am, is dying.
Yes, and small s.
Right? To make way for the transparency, for the genuine essence, or as you like to say, true self. So I was just going to play with another little thing that I'm used to hearing. And that is the kind of conversation where I'm not mad or what's wrong? Nothing. Which is a kind of bypassing that we would recognize, right? That we don't admit what's really going on with us. Yeah. We're not being present to what's really going on. Those are very simple examples, just in case anybody's wondering still what we're talking about. That's a kind of, not necessarily obviously spiritual, but it's definitely a bypassing.
Yeah, I wanted to make that point that, yes, there's a million ways that we're in denial or whatever. Spiritual bypassing, which is at least the topic for today, is a particular type of denial where we say, I'm fine. And whether it's spoken out loud or not, it's because I'm too spiritual to let that bother me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
There's a better than kind of attitude to it in a way, isn't there?
There is.
Well, I mean, it doesn't
Certainly
necessarily
can
have to
be.
be obvious.
Yeah.
Beg pardon?
I said
It
it
can
certainly can be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, but it's often that way.
that's true, because I mean, I could imagine it being almost like the opposite, where, and by the way, let's just be fair. Anyone, us present company included, when we're in that bypassing space, we're doing it as sincerely as we know how. We're not
Yeah.
like deliberately trying to be, superior or something.
Mhm.
But I was going to say the opposite of that is also, we might really go into the, the false humility, spiritual bypassing, where no, there's nothing important about me, and why would I be angry about what you said? I'm not even here,
Yeah.
Um,
You laugh, Miriam, but that's very common.
It is
I
very
know,
common.
it's just like I know people that I'm sure I've done it more than once.
Yeah.
It's just so funny. The things, I mean, using our creativity in that way is just, I
I
just
know, it's brilliant.
Yeah. But you know what? There's also a whole cultural layer and societal layer.
Different
Like,
cultures too. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I know I've been in circles where, with women who are complaining about things that they're unhappy about or things that are going on that they're angry about or whatever. And other women will tell them, stop being so negative all the time. We don't want you here unless you can be all positive and happy. So that's another aspect of it. Or, somebody dies and you're going around saying, oh, they're in a better place now, even though you're dying
Yeah.
inside.
Mhm.
There's expectations, or, it's very hard for men to show their emotions naturally in some societies. And if you're trying to be true to yourself, it can be dangerous sometimes, depending on how you show up. So there's
that
all sorts of
popular,
nuance to it, I think.
there's like an internet culture kind of right now. You see people saying positive vibes only.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the intent,
Sorry.
Yeah.
but you can get lost in that pretty quickly.
Yeah, and as a therapist, I get really curious. Like I'm the psychotherapist, right? I'm like, what's going on with that person who can't deal with anything other than positive vibes at the moment, right? What is it that you don't want to feel?
Yeah.
And so you put that on somebody else. And then there's that very interesting sort of possibility in it to find out and get to the essence of the person where they don't have to do that anymore. And then the person who is receiving that comment of positive vibes only or whatever it is, it's like, what do you do with that? Or do you go into a thing and do you bypass just to sort of placate the other person, keep yourself safe instead of actually staying and being with what's actually going on with you and knowing that you're strong enough to deal with whatever the other person shows up with of some sort of animosity. So there's so many possibilities hidden behind all of those bypassing situations, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And the positive spin that I've found with this kind of thing is that, like, I think really it's 100% of the time that when those negative emotions that I'm not even going to call them negative emotions, those difficult feelings that we experience, which means essentially that they're painful, and or we have some kind of programming that says we're not allowed to feel this way. Being with them and the whole process of being present with it opens up enormous opportunity for us. It's like hidden behind that scary feeling is enormous clarity and freedom. It's like every time. That's what I mean. I say it's 100%. That is the doorway that we're looking for, and if we're looking for positive feelings and spiritual and whatever, like to be the doorway every time, that's a doorway sometimes too, right? It's all a doorway. But if we think we're only going to get there with the good feelings, I think that's possibly, I mean, I'm just thinking of this now. Some of these gurus that, like attract all these followers, and then they do all kinds of crazy shit. They're sleeping with their followers, or this, stealing their money, or whatever it is. It's like maybe that's another version of bypassing, where they've only gotten there through one channel, and all that ignored stuff comes out in a different way. Now we've lost Miriam.
Now Miriam's bypassing.
That joke never gets old.
A lot of bypassing on the bypassing.
No, we're still here. Our tech lady's gone, but we're still here.
It's almost like there are forces. Like we're getting too close.
Maybe the
forces don't want us revealed.
It was like all of a sudden I was gone.
We noticed.
My ego dissolved.
Yeah.
Well, I've noticed one thing, and I'm really just noticing this in this conversation, but like a year ago, if I was having a conversation with the client, there was a lot of conversations about your egoic self, and your ego will eventually dissolve, and your ego is a construct. And that was kind of the way that I was framing it in the conversation. And I can remember a couple of clients getting really upset, specifically at the idea of the ego being something that was made up, and people really pushing that back. And I used to say your egoic self is just like the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. It's something that you've made up. And that was a lot of pushback. And I never made a conscious decision to stop talking about that. But somewhere along the way, I substituted it's your conditioning instead of it being it's your ego. And like reflecting back on that in the conversation that I've been having this year, that's like putting the medicine in a little bit of honey. It is grease for the conversational skids, and it seems to make it makes the exploration a lot easier. So, and I've always talked about, I probably have said 100 times on this podcast, so-called negative emotions, because I don't think anger and anxiety, I think those are, that's information, and it's teaching us something, and it's showing us something. And then what we do with what is showing is the practice of being present. But when I'm talking to clients, and instead of that being egoic, that being your conditioning, and I'm doing that myself, I'm finding things in my life, the weight thing that I've been struggling with, that all leads back to an early age imprint to clean my plate. And I've had to overwrite that. And it's been a little bit of a struggle that it's okay for me to take smaller portions, because it literally in our household, things got divided by the people that were at the meal. So we would have a big pot, and everybody got a quarter of it. And, I want my third or my half or whatever. And then the conditioning was also to clean your plate. And like being able to look at that when those things come up, even if it's just something that's coming up, our need to hide. And, I don't want to show that particular part of me. I think even that can be okay if you say to yourself, but I do need to, I'm going to wear the mask here under this circumstance because it's the path of least resistance right now. But there's a thread that I need to pull on there to see what's going on. And, I think two things. One is there was a book a while back called The Ego is the Enemy. And it's by a guy who does a lot of Stoic books, and it's a great book. But I just think that title really summarizes the way a lot of people look at the ego. And I think, like, anybody who claims to be enlightened, one of the things that starts happening to everybody that's in this person's circle will start looking back and go, oh, okay, well, let's see. Let's just see how enlightened you are. And then that person is going to be measuring everything that the person claiming enlightenment does versus their image of what an enlightened person looks like. And if in our frame of mind, oh, an enlightened person never loses their temper. And then if that person loses their temper, it's like, oh, he's not enlightened.
Yeah.
I thought he was enlightened. He acted like he was enlightened, but he really lost his shit on Thursday. That was not an enlightened person. And so I think a lot of it is just the projections that we have about the way things are supposed to be. And, so much of suffering in our life is a mismatch against how life is unfolding versus the story that we're telling ourselves about the way we would like it to unfold. And, that in that gap of the mismatch is where a lot of that suffering is. And it's where a lot of opportunity for exploration is as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Diving into that stuff and pulling those threads.
Yeah, that was
Then
really
it
useful.
becomes
I mean, I
fun.
think, we all have the urge to spiritually bypass sometimes. And just, I think it's great to point that, if we can be on the alert for labeling emotions as good or bad, that can be helpful, just seeing them for what they are. And the fact that we can have any feeling, they do have a purpose, they've got information, they're useful on some level. And the fact that we're able to spiritually bypass would suggest to me that it has some purpose as well. And, in really severely distressing situations, maybe spiritual bypassing is appropriate in some circumstances. Like you were saying, it's not to put it away completely, but just not in this moment. I'm not able, this isn't the right moment to take it on in a temporary measure. And that can be true of other things as well, like safety. You don't shout at people, but if there's a fire, it's okay to shout. Or in the same vein, there might be an appropriate place for spiritually engaging in spiritual bypassing under certain conditions. And again, I think it's really useful to remember that any uncomfortable feelings are just, an invitation to make an inquiry and to go and explore and see what's going on. And yes, as Miriam was saying, it looks like a big black hole that we're going to fall into and get lost in and even die maybe. But then the experience is the exact opposite when we can allow ourselves to actually face whatever is going on and be with it.
And what's interesting about the feeling itself, because I spend a lot of time sort of guiding people into that experience, like especially the somatic, like the physical experience of it. And what I've found is we all have like what I call the volume control. So you don't have to dive, over your head into the swamp right away. You can kind of go in slowly and you can turn up the volume. And, I always say, you don't want the volume so loud that it puts you into fight or flight, because that's just not productive. That's not what we're here for. And you don't want it so quiet that, like, why are we even bothering with this? So so I say, turn it up, like, let it be a little bit uncomfortable, because, we're adults. We can handle a little bit of discomfort, to do it willingly, like to choose, I'm going to go in and do this, and to bring some courage into the equation, and then and occasionally, in interacting with people, sometimes I see they're turning the volume up too high. And then even, then you just kind of got to talk people off the ledge. It's no big deal. But you could just see when they're not. It simply means, like, when you start getting into that fight or flight, it means you can no longer observe it anymore. You've turned on a different mode of your nervous system that is much more concerned with survival than it is with, self-inquiry or self-realization or something. So, but the point is, and people are sometimes, I'll often say, isn't it amazing that you can do that, that you could turn the volume up or down, like pretty much at will?
Yes.
Most people don't realize that's an option, like you can create like an appropriate working dosage of this feeling and then just be with it at that level. And then of course things are in constant, it's a dynamic kind of process. So it may intensify just by being with it, or it may disappear altogether just by being with it. We won't know until we try.
Hmm. One of the things I think is interesting about hypnotherapy when it comes to assisting people in being able to do what you were describing, Fred, is that, and even like treatment with EMDR, eye movement desensitization and I can't remember the last one. Suddenly it just went blank. Is this idea of being able to see things from a distance, right? So in hypnotherapy, at least my training in, and I don't have as much as Bobby, but there's this putting things on a screen. The Silva method does it. There are several methods that use that kind of thing to train people to not go into what people often call drama. I call it melodrama, or the story or the narrative or whatever you want to call it. Not go into it and experience it as if it's real, but to put it up on a screen and observe it. Like sit in a movie theater, put your story, whatever the thing is feeling or happening or whatever, on the screen and watch it like it's a film and see what you learn from that. What shows up, what arises from that. A way of expressive arts is noticing what arises in you in connection with that. And it's a wonderful way to train that ability to not go into it, not succumb to it. As you say, turn the volume up too high, because then you're into the survival mode and you're not relating in the same way. But to just be able to observe it, knowing that you're safe, it's not happening right now, and then I can process it. Rises in you, and get to the center of whatever, like my essence again, to put it that way. So just to mention that to people is one of the things I really like about hypnotherapy and these other sort of modalities like EMDR, because it is a way to train you to understand it's a story. It's not really happening. You can actually observe it and not be consumed by it. And then you remember that you are empowered, you're safe, you're fine. You're the one you master it. You're the one in control, actually, not the ego part to use that expression. I like to call it the need for survival in some cases, or conditioning, but as Bobby says, but give yourself the opportunity to see that you manage just fine. You're not in any real danger, and you don't have to. And then as you mentioned, sometimes, I mean, if I'm going to feel my feeling, whatever the feeling is, and allow it to be there, and maybe I need to express something in some way, is then possible that not with that particular person who can't seem to deal, who isn't able to give space to that feeling. So I go and do it somewhere else. Like some people go off into the forest in Norway and scream to their heart's content because they can get it out of their system without putting themselves in a situation where they may be met with some sort of animosity or judgment or something like that. But it's just, they know it's just energy. They just need to move it. They don't need to do anything else with it. So sometimes that sort of idea, again, having enough distance from something to make that kind of decision that, well, I really feel this energy, this anger, whatever it is, this is not the appropriate place to necessarily express it. So I will find another place. I still take care of myself. I don't pretend I don't have that feeling. It's not, oh, nothing. It is, this is what it is here. And then I need to find a place to take care of myself, to express it in a way that's healthy and helps me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Seems to me for a lot of people that are on a mindfulness journey that there is that moment that there's like a good vibe stage that people go through, because I think as they start practicing mindfulness and experience the personal peace that naturally comes from that, then they start looking at their environment and go, "Oh man, I'm feeling pretty chill right now. I don't want anything to interrupt this." But once you begin to see that these emotions are information and they may have something to tell us or teach us, or maybe an opportunity to explore, that kind of walking back into the fire is I mean, I like right now when I find something that I'm like, wow, why did I do that? That seems weird. Like going in and exploring that is, for me right now, doing that is really, really fun. And I'm getting intimate with my conditioning, not maybe as much intimate with myself, but it's kind of peeling back some of the layers of the conditioning. And I think anger and frustration and all of that have things to teach us. And those are emotions that need to be completed. I think that it'd be a good idea to complete them before you get to the point that the best strategy seems to be screaming in the woods. But if you're there, you're there. So let it all out. Let it, process it and complete the cycle and let it go.
I love the idea, like the premise that we are already whole. And there's nothing about us. And wholeness could be like a whole complete self, or it could be the wholeness of I am the universe. I mean, take that where you like. But what it's like, there's nothing that's excluded from that wholeness, whatever scale you're looking at. So, if I'm having an emotion, let's say anger, it's like that's part of the wholeness too. And I think of it as, when we're trying to be with these challenging because they're uncomfortable feelings, or when I'm guiding someone in this way, I always think about it like it's a part of myself, or it's a part of their self that at some point we may have rejected or pushed away because it didn't. And of course, all completely unconsciously, like our ego makes a decision that, based on conditioning and everything, like Bobby's saying, is not okay. This part of you is not okay, for whatever reason. Big boys don't cry, and so we push that part to the very periphery of like our being, and it just waits out there, and it's, to me, it's like a puzzle, so what we're doing is, by meeting this experience, so in such an honoring way, like, when it's very tricky because the ego does things like, it'll say, okay, if I accept you, will you go away? Stuff. That's again how tricky the ego can get. But so it's like, if we could just meet it, like though we're a child, and just say, I see you, I don't say we have to say the words, but it's like the energy of, I accept you. There's nothing that I want to change about you. I'm not working on my anger. You know what I mean? I'm embracing the part of myself that happens to be angry. And then it's like that puzzle piece can come home, and we experience more of our natural wholeness. The wholeness was already there, but we can't experience it, fully without that part being in place. So, yeah, I mean, there's just nothing. I don't believe in that there's something that we have to get rid of or excise or whatever. It's just finding out where it fits.
Yeah. And it's like, if I'm deciding that I shouldn't feel angry, or I shouldn't feel this, or this is a bad emotion and that's a good emotion, or whatever. Like, I tend to tell people, you don't stop generally speaking. I mean, some people do, but generally speaking, you don't stop yourself from laughing when something's funny or when you feel joy, right? So why would you stop yourself from crying when you feel grief, for example? But because we're taught, or we think, or we've felt shame or whatever. But the thing is, it's there, isn't it? I mean, we talk about presence. It's like, that is there. Whatever that feeling is, whether it's joy or whether it's grief, it's there. So when we start judging it as something, is when we kind of start getting into the bypassing and the trouble and everything, instead of like, okay, I'm feeling this thing. This is what is. And then, I mean, even Katie or Brandon Bays will be like, welcome it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting, I remember being, when I was younger, having blood tests, and it would be like, don't fight the needle, welcome the needle, because there's a difference between tightening up, oh my God, this is going to hurt, and it's supposed to go in there because this is supposed to be helping me. So what's the fight? It's like, this is actually a right thing, if you're going to use that word, and a useful thing to happen.
And even the pain.
Yeah.
It's just part of the experience.
Yeah. And I mean, the more I release that and welcome and open, the less pain I feel, if any. Right. So again, the fighting, a judgment against something is kind of like a fighting it. And it's like, what are you fighting? You're fighting the weather. You're going to stop it from raining just because you're fighting. I mean, it's going to rain anyway. You may as well make the best of it. It's like, it's raining. Okay, what do I need to do? So I'm angry. What do I need? I feel it. Or I feel sad, or whatever. What do I need? I think we can often get messed up by that, by sort of putting labels on things. It shouldn't be. So there's something wrong with it. Instead, yeah, but it's what is.
Yeah.
It's just complicates things.
Part of the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring in something that we mention every once in a while, just as we still have a little bit of time before we're done. And it is the quote from the French philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
Wow, nice.
I'm Canadian. I'm Canadian and live in France, so I'm not so happy. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. He said that around about 1900, 1910.
So he's the originator of that, huh? I've heard all different people.
Of that. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin is his name, French philosopher. And I'm going to play the devil's advocate, but not really. And I'm going to say, we are human beings having a spiritual experience, and we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and we're spiritual beings having a spiritual experience, and we're human beings having a human experience. So it's all of it. Like Fred, you were talking about the whole. We're everything. Have at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's Jesus said we are in the world, but not of the world. So it's just a question of perspective, I think. But I think I think the useful piece is that we can be fully, engaged in our humanness. But if we have that, like, knowing that there's something beyond this humanness, I say beyond, maybe that's not the perfect word, but something other than this human experience. And for me, at least, it doesn't mean like the next world, like someday we will go to heaven or something, but that right now there are dimensions that the physical experience, like this level of the experience, is just perhaps the most dense. Even to define it, really, it's funny because aren't those kind of arbitrary lines? Like, what is a human experience and what is a spiritual experience? Okay. I had a peach the other day. I got to tell you, it was a spiritual experience. But it's like, where do you decide that this is a spiritual experience and this is a human experience, or that I'm a human being having this, or a spiritual, I mean, words are fun and everything. I don't want to take away from the quote, but it's really just another way of saying what you said, Miriam, which is we are all of it. And I don't think it's that necessary to define where on the spectrum we are with it.
Yeah. I like that. I like the direction this conversation is going in. I think it's, for me, we're just part of nature. And all of nature is created from that same formless energy into form, us and everything else. And it's just one. It's just all one. So we can put whatever words on it. We can say we're having a monkey experience, but it's all part of the one. Yeah.
The idea, I think, for many of the bypassing will be so much focus on having placed the spiritual experience, whatever people decide that means for them, as some sort of higher and more worthy experience than the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to have our human experiences because we consider them lower, for example. Then it becomes, I don't want to have my human, I'm having a spiritual experience. I'm in touch with my higher self. I'm acting from my higher self, for example. Even the idea of having a higher self compared to a lower self, there's some sort of hierarchy judgment going on there, at least the possibility. When in fact, to put it that way, we are physical beings, like we are in a physical world having physical experiences. Otherwise, we would be spiritual, ether, whatever, without our bodies. So it's not ignoring or bypassing the physical human experience to the extent that we are physical and human. It's the whole of it. Yeah. So, and the judgment of that is like, I shouldn't, again, with it, I shouldn't be having this, or it shouldn't be this way, or this one thing is better than another, like the priest would be better than the parishioner or whatever. It's like, I think, Bobby, you'd call that conditioning in a way. That's like operating from your conditioning, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not,
the saint is better than the sinner.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another way of bypassing, right? All of these that have to be good rather than bad. Christmas, I mean, you're going to get presents if you're good rather than bad, right? But we're human. Remember, we're spiritual beings. Yeah, okay. And we're human. So
it's so beautiful because, sorry, finish what you're saying.
I'll go ahead. I was just going to say, try getting away from the human while you're in your human form. Good luck with that.
Not that we ever have.
Yeah. I mean,
just this idea that, I lost what I was going to say a moment ago. But, just this idea that there's some better now than now.
Yeah.
It's just really, to me, it's like, I mean, I don't know that any of this is actually true, but that we descend, we go from the one, like we're just all one, into the separate world of this body, and my body appears separate from your body. My friend and mentor Garrett used to say, like the Zoom screen is a great example, because there's this apparent division. Like I see 4 boxes on the screen, divided by these arbitrary black lines. Yet if we go back to what's behind the images, we have the screen, the one screen that we all share, and so the images are just projections, but there's really just one thing happening, and that one thing expresses through a Miriam or a Bobby or a Jan or a Fred or whoever. But the bypassing is thinking that this image on the screen is not enough, and that somehow I have to be the screen only and not the image. And I mean, seems like that's why we came here.
I think so.
The whole purpose, yeah. Bobby, you
mean,
had your hand up a moment ago. Do you have something you want to add?
Oh, I did, but it's past. I don't remember what it was.
It's bypassed. We're just going to keep using it. That's right.
Ah, dear. All right. I actually found on the internet a list of 10 ways to bypass.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I mean we've mentioned most of them. One of them, let's see, specifically the victim bypass, like taking responsibility for someone else's happiness or not taking responsibility for one's own, for example, or using psychedelic drugs is an example, considered an example of bypass in this particular
Well,
website.
you got to question the intent, though.
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
am I using the psychoactive drugs?
yeah, absolutely. And there's some people who believe that they have to have them and they have to do it often because that's the way to have the experience. And you have to go through all of that. Like I've trained in a certain type of craniosacral, or some people say craniosacral work, and where they talk about unwinding, and you go through this unwinding process. That's a very physical, and it's basically reliving like most of the most horrible traumatic experiences of your life and believing that that is necessary in order to come to some sort of enlightenment or release or openness at the end. And I mean, there is definitely something that happens, but the idea that it has to be that way, you have to suffer in order to get some sort of enlightenment, that's another kind of way of bypassing. Yeah, you have this smile on your face, Fred. I'm just kind of.
I know that story very well. I mean, so I did for practice for 25, but studied for probably 35 years. This particular form of chiropractic, network spinal analysis, used to be called network chiropractic, which is in the beginning, this is what I was getting at, used to evoke these huge, dramatic, cathartic, I mean, screaming and laughing. And oh my God, you just, and you walk into a room where this is happening, like there used to be these big transformational events with like 100 people on the table. And it was like, you just landed on some other weird planet, but this is the part. So the guy that created this work, Dr. Donnie Epstein, is really just such a visionary genius. And in the beginning, we used to talk about this chiropractic entity called a subluxation, which is a spinal distortion that can cause interference in nerve flow, et cetera. We don't use that term anymore. But so he checks this guy on the stage and he goes, oh yeah, here's the pattern, C2 or something, right? And this is a guy who had a lot of work. And so he knew what he was supposed to do. So Donnie takes a contact on him, and the guy starts going, right? Goes through this whole big dramatic thing. And then Donnie checks his neck and he goes, still there. Like the pattern was still there. And for me, that was such a revelation. Like all of that drama didn't change what was in the way. Yeah. So I'm not saying there's never, like you said earlier, a reason why we might not have emotions that genuinely have to move that way. But there's no right way to do it. There's just some people and each person will do it differently.
And the idea that it has to be like that.
Right.
Again, from the idea that something about me now is wrong. And so I have to go through this whole dramatic and horrific experience to get to something that's better.
And you can get addicted to that, boy.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting working with different people who've done who studied and treating people with osteopathy or craniosacral treatment, where they don't take people through unwinding. And it's just fine. You don't have to go through any of that.
Oh.
It's very interesting. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that is this coming up as one of the ways that bypassing it's considered. It can be one way of bypassing. Horoscope bypass.
Oh, we're back on our list.
Yeah, there's a way of like not getting in touch with your inner and your own sort of whatever you want to call it, true self, but using things outwards. I help people. I use psychic mediumship abilities sometimes in healing. But generally for people who are in a place where they just cannot see. There's something that's been there for a long time and they just don't see. And so I will offer to see if I can see. And then once it's through, it's like, okay, it's all yours now. here you go. So not to bypass, to open. So yes.
Bye, Jan.
Oh, okay. Enjoy. Jan has to leave us right now, so enjoy. She's bypassing us. Oh no. Anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but those were a couple of things that I thought were worthwhile mentioning, that people will often not consider to be some sort of bypass. They even bring up prayer as bypass, or having a guru as bypass.
Well, I mean, I don't know how this list is written, if they're saying that is bypassing, but what's that?
Yeah, they say these are 10 ways you can that are bypassing. Yeah.
Which, by the way, that entire list seems like potentially the author's spiritual bypassing, but it's like, I mean, I have no problem. Any of those things can be that.
Yes.
But to make them like a list is, I mean, maybe missing the point. It's Bobby looks like he's got something.
Yeah, and I see that so much with meditation. I teach meditation, so I'll introduce people to the concept of meditation, and many people take to it right away, and it is a profound experience to feel your mind getting quiet if you have been suffering with a lot of background noise your whole life. And then that becomes the new addiction. And, sometimes people are like, we talked about doing this twice a day. And when I tell people, I just say, oftentimes you're guided to do it twice a day. If you find you're guided to do it more, that's cool. If you're find that you can't fit it in, that's cool too. Just find what works for you. In fact, I saw a Seinfeld interview where he's talking about transcendental meditation, which he also practices and has practiced for 25 years. But he said, and TM is 20 minutes twice a day is the way it's prescribed. But he said within the first couple of weeks, he realized that the morning meditation just wasn't working for him, and it just didn't make sense. He's like, I just came out of sleeping for 7 hours. Why would I want to go down and go back to sleep again? I'm already there. So he just eliminated that. And he just does it once a day. And so, having that in your life as a tool and using it when you feel like you need it as a tool is a good thing. But to suddenly think, my day's beautiful if I've meditated twice a day, and I'm off today, and I know why, because I missed my morning meditation, that just becomes a new crutch. It goes from being a tool to being a crutch that you've got to have with you all the time. And, there's lots of techniques that people can be introduced that can get you into mindfulness and can do it wonderfully, but you don't have to practice them all. And you don't have to practice any one specifically. Some people can't quiet their mind. So a walking meditation or something like Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga is a better pathway for them to keep their bodies super active and allowing their mind to just relax into the experience of doing the practice.
I'm just going to quickly mention, thank you, Bobby. I'm just going to quickly mention this list that I was talking about, the 10 ways to bypass spiritually. It is lonerwolf.com if you want to check it out, anybody who's watching. And the thing this is interesting information if you are wondering whether you are bypassing or not. It might be helpful for you to look at the list and see if anything resonates for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be with it. This is not how we say, oh, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. And this is bypassing. This isn't bypassing. That's not, at least I don't feel like that's my place to say, because that sounds like I'm talking about somebody else and what they're doing. And we do that as examples, but it's not my business. So the invitation is, if you feel that this might be useful for you, take a look at the website and see if anything resonates with you, is my suggestion. So, and again, with the idea that it's all a part of the whole, there's nothing wrong with it. it may not be useful for you in the long run, and something else might be more useful, but there's nothing wrong. So just to make that clear. Again, the no judgment. So we're at the end of the hour, gentlemen. And
Once
I
again,
wonder if you have anything you would like to tell people about things you're doing. Maybe you have some coaching spaces available or some cool course coming up or something. Fred, you haven't been here for a while, so how about if you start?
I'm happy to start. I do have a couple of coaching spaces available, so there's that. Happy to share it with anyone in our vast audience that would like to join. And I have some other cool stuff coming up, but it's not ready to announce just yet. So stay tuned.
Yay. If you need to get hold of Fred or you'd like to talk with him, you see his contact information at the bottom of the screen. And of course, it can also be found in our free Facebook group, The Presence Posse. Bobby, what you got?
Well, still, I don't have any coaching spaces available. My practice is full right now, but I did just release a book, Unencumbered, Living Life in Flow. It's available. I recommend that if people get it, they get it as an audiobook, because when you get it as an audiobook, you get the PDF of the written version of the book as well. And it's really an immersion program to look at exactly all of the things that we talk about on this podcast. And it's my attempt to teach the material and to work with people on a one-to-many basis. So it's a little bit of an experiment. It is available for free in the Presence Posse group. It's available for free in my group, which is Our Mindful Life. And it's about to be released on a course, as a course, on the Insight Meditation Timer app.
Nice.
So if you're already a member there, you can explore the entire book for free, but it's available. I'm working to get it up. Amazon is just an unbelievable pain to work with, and it was easier for me to get it through Walmart and Barnes and Noble and all of the other places that you get it through than it has been to get it into Amazon. So
Cool.
that's out there. Yeah.
And again, you can go into the free Facebook group, The Presence Posse, and find it there. And you'll also find Bobby's contact information if you missed it on the screen. And that is great.
How about you, Miss Miriam? What's going on in your world?
Miss Miriam, thank you, has a few coaching spaces available. So if you would like to work with me or talk to me about working with me, you are welcome to contact me at the information below. I am also just having a little bit of fun. I joke about being a little bit woo, but not completely woo-woo. So I am the kind of psychic medium that does not need any sort of extra. I don't use pendulums. I don't use crystals. I don't use tarot. I don't do that sort of thing. But I've been playing around with oracle cards because people have been talking to me about them and wanting me to try them. And I have seen some interesting things happen with them. And I just decided I was going to play. Some people feel more comfortable when they have something concrete to work with instead of me just talking with them and asking them questions and that sort of thing. So I have been bringing in oracle cards into my practice, and I am offering for the next few days 50% off card readings. So I have my own way of working with them. It's just not your typical thing. If you'd like to try it out, you can contact me and I will send you a link just for the next few days. So that's me. And we have not decided yet what next tema, a theme topic, whatever, wrong language. Pick one. Topic is for next week. So we will put the information in the Presence Posse group on Facebook.
Presence and indecision.
Yeah.
Presence and uncertainty.
We have not done that. Yeah.
Presence
That's
and not
actually a
knowing.
really good idea. Presence in the
There you
unknown.
go.
That is a really good idea. Presence in indecision. Yeah, that's good. We might actually do that. Stay tuned to
Well, I
find
hope we
out.
actually don't do it next week because I won't be here, and I want to be here for that one.
You miss all the best ones, Bobby.
I know, I know. I think you guys
That's
save
because
them
they're
for
all
when
the
I'm
best ones.
traveling.
They're all the best ones. Take care, everyone. All of you who were with us today, thank you very much for joining us. And if we haven't seen your comments, this new system is a little bit, still, I'm sort of getting used to it. So I will check in the group to see what you've written, and we will respond to your comments. See you next Monday on the next edition of the Presence Posse Presents. And thanks to Bobby and Fred.